Thank you guys for allowing us the opportunity to present today. We hope you really enjoy our presentation. We want to keep it a little bit more informal since millennials are the informal type. And I'm Shazeen Sayani. I work at Grant Thornton. I've been there for about a year and a half. And I graduated from Loyola in 2015. And this is Angie.
Hi everyone, my name is Angie Zekpi and I'm a wealth and asset management auditor at Ernst & Young. And we are excited to be discussing this topic with you guys, leading across generations. So first, a little bit of background on the Analyst and Associate Board. The board consists of past FEI scholarship recipients, such as myself, and also high-performing individuals and young professionals, such as Shazeen. Our mission is exactly why we are here today, to bridge the generation gap between the seasoned professionals in FEI and millennials, such as Shazeen and I. So our mission is to provide young professionals with transformative opportunities to become the financial leaders of tomorrow, similar to the leaders that you guys are today. I also want to discuss, we will be having a C-suite breakfast June 9th at the Chicago Board of Trade. The topic will be to earn or learn, and it will be discussing advantages and disadvantages of attending school right away or waiting a couple years. So we are all interested in you joining us, and even on the feedback request, if you can almost write your RSVP and we will be emailing you individually.
They can always sign up with me too.
Yeah. Contact Janine also, yeah. And we have a great panelist here today. First off, we have Courtney Templin. She is the president of JV Training Solutions. She is co-author of 2 books, Manager 3.0 and How to Say It on Your Resume. And Courtney was selected as a 35 under 35 making an impact, recognizing professionals making a difference in Chicago. Our next panelist is Steve. He is the senior associate at Overture Group. He brings experience with organizational development and millennial retention strategy. He chairs a committee on the associate board of the Knight Ministry and is managing editor for Millennial Politics. And our last panelist is John Schneider. He is the vice president of finance and risk at 7 Multi-Site Solutions. His work has been instrumental in re-engineering work processes, identifying cost improvement opportunities, and providing leadership on both strategic and operational issues. Panelists, we're very excited to have you. I know, John, you mentioned sometimes you'll be up here speaking with us, right? I'm just kidding.
I'll fill in wherever you need.
Just kidding. Okay. So currently the workforce, there are 4 different generations. You have the baby boomers, which range from age 53 to 71. You have Generation X, ranging from 37 to 52. Millennials, such as Shazeen and I, ranging from 17 to 36. And Generation Z, who are up to 17 years old. So this generation, there aren't a lot of studies for them because they're currently either partaking in internships, but there's still a lot of research to be done on this new generation. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are currently 159 million workers in the workforce. The breakdown between these is 34% millennials, 34% Generation X, 31% baby boomers, and 1% Generation Z.
So how do these 4 generations differ from each other? So the baby boomers are the type of individuals who live a life of working to live, living to work. And they're the type of people who are very focused on their work, and they're a little bit competitive. They want to reach the top. They grew up shortly after the Great Depression, where things were changing. They saw their families go through the Great Depression, and they always knew that they needed to work very hard to reach the top. And most of their goals in life are focused around being successful and getting to the top. And they're the type of people who are very obedient. They are very formal. You don't see a lot of baby boomers as informal as the millennials are. You see them very disciplined and respectful. The next generation that I want to talk about is Generation X. And they're also called the forgotten middle child. If any of you guys are the middle child in this room, you kind of know how that feels. The older child gets all of the glory from their parents, whereas the younger child gets all the attention from them, but the middle child is kind of, they don't get too much recognition from their families. So this is what this generation is like. They want a work-life balance, and but at the same time, they know when they need to step up and be that leader that they need to be. These people would be the managers, maybe the senior managers, not quite the CFOs yet, but they're going there. And they live a very fast-paced life. They're very independent. This is the generation that saw the traditional gender roles changing. They saw their mothers going to work as well as their fathers, so they're very independent. The next generation is the millennials. They are all about living their life, and work is a supplemental to their life. But if you mix in something that they're very passionate about in work, they will gladly work the extremely long hours, and they will put in their all as long as they have a purpose with their work. And they are multitasking, they like to keep up, they're fast-paced, they like to work in teams. They expect that constant feedback from their supervisors. I know personally, I always want feedback on how I'm doing at work, and I don't just wait for that annual performance review. I'm always asking my managers, how am I doing? What did you think about this? How can I improve myself? So that's a little bit about them, and they really want flexibility in their lives. Working from home is very important sometimes for them because they usually mix work and life together. And then Generation Z are the 17 and 18-year-olds of today. They are very reliant on technology. If you think millennials are addicted to their phones, Generation Z cannot breathe without their phones. They are so addicted to them. And if you think millennials can multitask, if millennials can use 2 computer screens and multitask, Generation Z can use 5. They are very technology reliant. They prefer working individually than working on teams. And this is the generation that has online, high school offers Generation Z online classes now, which is something that millennials never saw. We always needed to go to school, but nowadays, Generation Z, they can take online classes in high school, which is a crazy thought. Different needs of communication. Baby boomers are the type that want face-to-face communication, and if they can't get that face-to-face communication, telephone. They're not about IMing at work. Whereas Generation X is the adaptable generation that can adapt to a face-to-face or email. They can do it all. Millennials are the type that will stretch the IMs, the emails. They don't like too much face-to-face conversation, but of course, if they need it, they will do it.
So these 4 generations also have different views on authority. For instance, baby boomers, they have more respect for the established hierarchy, whereas Generation X is encouraged to challenge the system. Millennials, on the other hand, they're encouraged to take on different roles consistently. What I mean by that is, in public accounting, not only are you maybe a tax accountant or an audit, but you're also asked to do recruiting events. You're asked to partake in a lot of volunteering opportunities, such as hedge fund cares events. You're also asked to partake in external and internal organizations, such as I'm part of the newsletter that my firm issues out. So you take on a lot of different responsibilities, even though your role might be an auditor. Generation Z, they're encouraged to also challenge old structures and to bring in innovative ideas. Their views on authority in regard to the culture and how they view managers is also very different. Baby boomers and Generation X have a more formal relationship with their managers, whereas millennials aim to build an informal relationship. For instance, I partake in a kickball league every Wednesday afternoon with my seniors and my managers, and that has allowed me to build a relationship with my managers outside of work as well as inside. So it allows for greater collaboration in the workforce. Generation Z, we see a new trend as them looking into their managers more of coaches instead of someone that's just telling them what to do. So a question for our panelists. What are some of the main differences that you have seen in regard to characteristics of these 4 generations? You can touch on work-life balance or even their views in the workplace.
Sure, I'll go. Yeah, I think we touched on the bigger thing that I see consistently across most of the places that I'm going into on a client basis. It's that the work-life balance is, that balance is different across generations. For the younger folks, the exterior involvement activities are a priority. Serving on associate boards, as these 2 ladies, working with organizations that have an impact both in the city but also globally, right? With fundraising, with the 10Ks that you're constantly getting asked to donate to. These aren't necessarily things that they would do if it wasn't for the impact that these organizations, that these groups have outside of that activity. And so while all of that is great and it provides us with a lot of different ways to network, to get to know people, to have an impact outside of maybe our small circle, at times it can be a detriment to in the workplace. And I know this is true for me at times. I run a big political newsletter, and a lot of times, I have to take 10 minutes and have a Skype call in the middle of the workday to make sure that that thing that I'm doing on the weekends is running well and the publishing schedule is right. That might not be the best professional choice for me, right? However, I think that just on the priorities where the younger folks are, that involvement and kind of being part of something bigger is really important. And because of that, companies can kind of harness that in some ways that I'm sure we'll talk about as we move forward. But I think that's one of the bigger differences I see.
I'll speak from the baby boomer standpoint. The baby boomers will give up, will work and give up personal things because one of the things that we want to do is we want to stand out as baby boomers. We want to stand out to our employer. It's not that the other people aren't committed to their employer. They certainly the other generations, but their personal life is just as important as their work life. And so one of the things that they like a lot more is that flexible work schedule, so that they can really balance that work and personal life. That us baby boomers, we'll give it up and do what we got to do to get ahead. So.
Good morning, everybody. One of the things that really jumps out to me whenever thinking about the generations is the different views from the generations on what they're seeking from work and what they want from work. And for millennials, it is much more of a holistic view. Millennials I want work to be a reflection of who I am. And I have a wonderful anecdote from our company that I think exemplifies this. And we were about 7 or 8 years ago hiring new employees, entry-level workers, so right out of school. And our question was, what is your ideal work environment? So big company, small company, fast-paced. We wanted to know, and we're a small business, so if they're looking for the big company culture, then we might not have been the best fit for them. And our CEO, Brad Karsh, who is an Xer, says that whenever he was going through the interview process, if he would have been asked that question, he would have said, my ideal work environment is a company that pays me money. Whenever we asked these 5 college students from 5 different schools, they said some version of this answer, which is, I want to work at a company where I can connect to the big picture and where my contributions are valued. So completely different than that the paycheck. It's purpose, it's fulfillment, it's meaning. We've all talked about it here that it's not work and life in 2 different buckets for millennials. It's one bucket. So I want my life, my work life, to have purpose and meaning. And that's what they're hoping for whenever they come to work. And now we're seeing much more employers trying to give that holistic career experience.
Yeah, thank you, panelists. Courtney, you touched on something that Shazine is also going to touch on, purpose. That's very big for millennials nowadays when they're searching for their next career move. So why does understanding these differences matter? Well, it allows you to provide greater efficiency and greater productivity when you're leading an organization. Challenges in the workplace due to generational gaps. Flexibility may be misinterpreted if there's poor communication. Sometimes baby boomers might view the millennials' need to consistently leave earlier and come in later as something that they're just lacking, or they lack motivation, they lack ambition. If there's poor communication with your manager or with your employees, then of course there's going to be misinterpretation. You need to make sure as a manager that when you're talking to millennials, you kind of keep up a status call when they're even working from home. For instance, we have status calls when we're working from home and we know exactly what we need to get done for the day. And even if we're working from home, we can maybe take off an hour or two, but then we also make up for those hours later on in the day. It's exactly what Courtney was saying about a work-life balance for millennials. Decreased productivity due to multitasking. Steve, you mentioned this also. Millennials, they tend to have so much going on with other organizations, with volunteer opportunities, that sometimes they're multitasking and it might hinder their performance. For instance, I see people in meetings and they're chatting other coworkers, emails are coming in, they're trying to take notes during meetings, so it's a bunch of social media might be up on their computer, so it's a bunch of different things that are pulling at their attention and it's preventing them from focusing on one thing. So what baby boomers can do, or what managers can do, is have a no laptop policy when you're entering a meeting and make sure that everyone is actively listening.
Andrew?
Yes?
What about expectations? I mean, so, you know, typical workday, there's, you know, heavy time demands, staffs are small, and, you know, there's a need to stay late. And I find that the expectation is, yeah, the baby boomer's the guy that's staying there finishing up stuff as the you know, Gen X and millennials are heading out the door at 4:30. And, you know, I don't know, at least for me, it creates some ill will in the workplace. It feels discriminatory to me that, you know, I'm the guy sitting there finishing stuff up when other people are getting paid as well, you know. So well, how do you fix that? And I guess the other thing I've seen recently, we just finished our year-end audit, is, you know, I've got Gen X auditors sitting 15 feet away from me, and they're sending me, you know, a page of stuff that they need to do their audit, when it'd be a hell of a lot more efficient to take you know, 5 steps out the door and ask me for stuff, and certainly talk about stuff and let me explain it, as opposed to let them, you know, spin their wheel trying to figure out a spreadsheet or a complex issue that crosses a lot of different expertise levels as well.
So I think the first one, in regard to how to encourage them to work late, also, Shazine and I are both in public accounting, so we both have had our share of busy seasons of sleeping at 4 a.m. or working until 2 a.m. in the workplace. So how you can motivate that is, as Courtney said, motivate with a purpose. Show them how they're fitting into the larger picture. If they think that their work is just minimal tasks that they just need to get done and they're out the door, then they will do that. But if you show them as a partner, you know what? This is how your work is contributing. This is how you are working with the team. That will allow them, that from personal experience, and I know from Shazine's personal experience, when you feel like you're part of the firm, you will definitely be more motivated to be part of that team and stay later. And that is the reason that I stay late at my firm, because I believe in my team. I don't want to let other members stay later than me, because I feel like I have a purpose just like they have a purpose.
And to touch on what Angie is saying, I think one of the biggest issues with having some of your team stay late and some of them leaving early is just the communication gap. I know, like, when you're busy, mostly everyone on the team should know that this is a busy time for us. We're going to need to put in the hours. But if that's not communicated in advance, or if it's not known to the rest of the team, then that's what creates the issues because they have prior commitments. But if the team is well aware that this is our busy time, we may need to put in the late hours, then the team shouldn't really have too many excuses unless it's an emergency. And just having that open communication where your team knows that, hey, we're gonna need to stay late this week, and just having that open communication with them really helps bridge the gap between that. I know in public accounting, that is one of the biggest things. My team is all about more over communication than too little communication. And that is one of the biggest points we give our new interns and associates is about over communicating your schedule. If, for example, this FEI event in the morning, I communicated to my managers well in advance, hey, I'm gonna be coming in an hour late to work this morning because I have an event to go to. And they were very supportive about it. So they can manage without you if they know in advance. For example, if you need this one Gen X auditor, but they have a prior commitment, we can work around their schedule to get someone else staffed on that engagement during that time. And I think that's the best way to make sure that everyone is working their fair share and that no one is overworked.
Yeah, just one other comment. I think the other thing is, while we're working late, it doesn't mean that they're not working as well. And you know, that's that flexibility. You know, they're gonna take off, maybe they got a kid's baseball game or whatever it might be, but that doesn't mean that at 9, 10, or 11 o'clock at night, they're not working. And I think that's the one thing that we don't realize is, you know, we're gonna work, get it all done, and we leave, good, we're done, we don't have to go back. I mean, you know, last night I'm answering emails at 10:30 at night because people are working on their timesheet at 10:30, you know, it's like, wait a minute. But that's just how they are.
And I know a lot of my team, they like to stay late and work, whereas I'm an early riser and I'll wake up and start working at 5 in the morning so I can leave maybe at 6 p.m. if we're busy. So just understanding everyone's schedule and planning. And I think it's really important to let your subordinates upward manage you, because if they tell you, like if they give you, hey, this is when you're reviewing this item, and they put it on your calendar, you already have it there, you know when you will get it, it lets them work around their schedule and your schedule. They know when you're free and they'll make sure that you have it at this specific time. So that's also another way. Yep.
Just to kind of support that and follow up on it, for the past 8 years I've been with the digital advertising agency. We've had a lot of millennials. The CEO founder was from the madman world of advertising, where if you have a pitch to do the next day, you start at 5 p.m. and you work through the night. And they had a lot of problems with the millennials at first until they really learned how to work with them, learned that these young kids really want to take more ownership than earlier generations. And it got to a point where they realized that these kids want to be more involved in every aspect of the product, of the project, to the point we were able to bill them at higher rates because they were doing better work than people of their same years of experience. So it really became a positive to us. But you had to learn to work with the schedule. You had our CEO had to learn to deal with what he initially considered kind of impertinence, when they would say, oh, I don't like that idea. I mean, our generation would never tell a CEO, I don't like that idea. Their generation will. Once you learn to leverage that, it really became a positive, and we had a really good experience.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's kind of with the lack of promotions or feedback. Millennials are constantly searching for that new opportunity. So I know even in public accounting, I only have 1.5 years, so I should technically, my title is a staff accountant, but I'm already taking on senior roles, so I'm already senioring in my job. So although I don't have the title, I do have the work that reflects it, and it's exactly to your point.
And they're probably billing you at the higher rate too.
Exactly.
That's what we did.
Exactly, so this allows you, they've kept me in the firm with these new challenging opportunities. As a senior, I have been staying later because you have to respond to your manager, and you also have to make sure that your staff know exactly what they're doing. But because I see a purpose in my firm, that has allowed me to put in the work hours. Another thing that's prominent in public accounting is flight risk. The risk that employers are investing a lot of time and money into training you, and then in public accounting, maybe you'll leave after 2 or 3 years. So sometimes Shazine was talking to me about this, that staff sometimes are called sunk costs because they're only currently training you until you actually develop into professionals that know exactly what they're doing.
So some of the partners at my firm joke around and call the interns and associates sunk costs because the first year at Grant Thornton, you're honestly getting paid to learn because you're learning your role, you're learning how to audit this and tie a trial balance, you're learning the ropes of the firm. So it's funny because I was very offended when they were like, you're a sunk cost. And now that I'm a little bit older, I understand why they call us that because it takes a lot of time to train a new staff or an intern to do their role. So, and I think it takes about 3 years to fully capture the cost of hiring someone new. So you don't want your new millennial to leave within a year because that's a waste of money for organizations.
And another challenge is actively listening versus constantly speaking up. An article that I was reading is that millennials are so used to social media and constantly receiving comments and likes on their pictures or their posts that we constantly feel like we need to put our opinion out there. So even during a meeting, we might raise our voice, and even if it's a partner in front of us, we might say, well, I don't think that's right, or I don't think this. And as you mentioned, baby boomers might not do that in front of their CEOs. So it's always important to have that open communication and to tell millennials sometimes you need to learn how to actively listen because seasoned professionals, they have a wealth of knowledge to give you. And then for baby boomers also, there's innovative ideas that come out of millennials. So it's important to strike that balance when going into a meeting. And now Shazine will talk about how you motivate the 4 different generations.
So, as Courtney said, the best way to motivate a baby boomer is to give them cold, hard cash. Cash meaning appreciate their knowledge, their attitude, their skills, and their habits. So a baby boomer is the person who knows the what, where, when of your organization. They know the ins and outs, and if you reward them for their knowledge and what they know, this is something that they very much appreciate. And their attitude. If your baby boomer is involved in something that they think is very important to them, acknowledging them for their attitude, maybe in a newsletter or sending an email to the CFO of the organization, just acknowledging that this baby boomer is doing a wonderful job is something that they also appreciate. They like to feel important and to know that they're important. And skills. If something that they would appreciate is if they are not too experienced in the subject, if you send them out to a conference maybe in Las Vegas or wherever to learn that experience and gain more knowledge, that's also something that they appreciate. They feel like their company is invested in them. And then habits. If your baby boomer is heavily involved in an organization or if they're on the board of a not-for-profit charity, and if the firm really invests with them, with that organization. For example, I know at Grant Thornton United Way we have a good connection with them and we hold fundraisers, and just having the partner or the baby boomer who is involved in that and showing them that the firm is also involved in what they're invested in is another way to motivate them. Motivating Generation X is a little bit different, letting them know that they have their work-life balance and that they can invest time with their families and that you appreciate their contributions to the firm. These are your managers who are actually training the new hires and the seniors. They're the ones who are building your staff up to do a great job for the organization. Allowing them time and following up with them and meeting with their commitments is also important to them. Motivating millennials and Generation Z is a little bit different. Millennials love attention. They want to have customization. They want to know that their contributions to the workplace are important. And as a millennial, I know that it is important to us, and just collaborating with the millennial. If the team is sitting at the table, the millennial wants their contributions to be heard and appreciated and acknowledged, and give them some positive reinforcement. If they come out with a new way to streamline a process, don't just say good job, but actually say good job and actually incorporate that into what you're doing. Because millennials multitask a lot. We look for shortcuts to everything. So it's a really good way to streamline a lot of processes that are in the organization. And millennials are the type of people who they don't work for you, they work with you. Whereas I feel the baby boomer generation was very, they worked for their bosses. They didn't work with them. They were very obedient to their bosses. Whereas millennials don't believe in that. They think we're a team, we work together. I don't work for you. So it's a little bit different. And then some ways to kind of bridge the gap is to ensure that there are face-to-face meetings so that you can build those relationships. You can't really build a relationship with your millennial subordinate over an IM message or an email. You really need to get the time to know them and learn who they are, and that's something that they appreciate. But also pay attention to the new trends and make learning fun for them. Don't just have them sit in a training room listening to you talk for 2 hours. Have them engage in that conversation as well. And then, of course, to keep them working properly, establish those deadlines, but ask them if it also works with their schedule. This is a way to show them that their contribution to the organization is important. And then managing different generations, open space. Facebook's CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, he is known to sit with his staff. He doesn't sit in a personal office. They have an open space, and he sits with his staff, and he is not the type to have that structure where his subordinates are afraid to maybe ask him something. He has a very open environment. And then in Chicago, we have 1871, which is a hub for over 400 different startups, and it's a collaborative space for a lot of these new startups to get together and share their wealth of knowledge and build those relationships. And a lot of these startups are doing great things. I don't know if you guys know, but it is like they're doing great. And then the new workplace. Google has Google's workplace. If you ask a millennial, where do you want to work? They say Facebook or they say Google, because they have a workplace where very casual, they have a full cafeteria, they have a gym, they have beanbag chairs, they have an open space, they have everything that you could ever need at work. So Google has not revealed how much all of this costs, but they believe that this is a benefit to their workforce because the new millennials have no reason to go home. They have everything they need at work. So that's a good way to keep your talent working long hours without them complaining too much or wanting to go home. And C-Strip is a Expedia equivalent in China. They wanted to try out a new flexible work arrangement for their workers, and they noticed a 13.5% increase in their customer service reps accepting calls and getting everything straightened out when they were working from home. So it's so counterintuitive to think that working from home is a distractor because there's so much going on. But for the millennials, they're very used to that fast-paced environment. So working from home is actually beneficial for them because they can get things in their personal life done and then they can get work done at the same time. A question for the panelists. What are some of the unique features you have seen that companies employ to motivate or attract employees? Do these features differ across generations?
I'll hop in here on this one. So we're seeing a lot of creative things here, and I'll highlight 3 quickly. The first one is leadership development and rotational programs. So millennials, it really is all about that learning and career development and growth. So they're actively looking for organizations that have a rotational program. So even if you think of in finance, maybe it's a 1 or 2 year program where they spend a few different months in different areas of finance. Other organizations have it more broad, where the finance folks might spend time in marketing and HR. For the company, it builds really well-rounded employees, and for Millennials is a challenge, it's very dynamic, things are changing all the time, and absolutely growing as an employee. So that's one. The second is flexibility. I feel like we've talked a lot about that, but employers are actively promoting that, and it's not just about when and where the work happens, but what projects I can work on and participate in, and how I get the work done. So really broadcasting that flexibility. And then the final one that I thought you all might find pretty interesting is just student loan repayment. And this is not a common practice, but it's noted as one of the hottest trends for 2017 is now that millennials are entering the workforce with quite a bit of debt, employers recognizing that as a way that they can support them. And from the millennials' perspective, 401k and retirement options seem really far away. And a lot of times that was a competitive benefit and advantage that employers would showcase, but rather this loan repayment assistance jumps out immediately to millennials.
From my standpoint, I guess what I've seen us do for really the millennials is one is we're always making sure that we have the latest technology. And so no one walks into the company and they're getting an old computer that has been around for a few years. We're buying them a brand new computer, brand new iPhone. We develop our own apps that we utilize for our customers. So that's one of the ways. I think the other thing that we want to provide them challenging work. We try to give them a variety of work, and the whole flexibility again. We allow we have 225 employees, and about 200 of those employees work out of their homes, and so that gives them a lot of flexibility. And also, we don't have the traditional vacation. When we us baby boomers, how many weeks do I get? Do I get 2? Do I get 3? Do I get 4? We don't have that anymore. It's you take off whatever you need. So, and we look at it from a standpoint of, look, if you're a new employee, we certainly don't expect you to be off for 4 weeks, but we certainly don't monitor it. We expect them to be their own manager in that regard. Even the way we review employees, the old way that we reviewed employees, is, okay, we're going to have all these categories, we're going to rank you from 1 to 5, and we're going to sit down and get comments, and we don't do that. And what we look for is, what are your work goals, as well as what are your personal goals. We want to help them achieve their personal goals as well. So.
Yeah. I think we've hit on kind of my main answer, which is kind of trying to loop folks into the bigger picture as early as possible. And so I wanted to just kind of give an example that I had and was awesome. And yeah, as opposed to kind of saying larger kind of idea things. So at my last company, we had about 90 folks sitting on one floor, big open office environment, right? Cubicles that kind of ended like here. Down here there were glass, so you could see it over to the person next to you, and it's supposed to increase communication, break down barriers. That didn't actually happen, right? So we had like 90 people, and we all kind of sat with our teams, and people still didn't know who the teams were that was a team over from them. Because we were all still pretty siloed inside of our own work, right? So it's not necessarily about how you're setting up your office furniture that makes the culture, but I kind of saw, I had just come onto the company. People didn't necessarily know, who to talk to in another unit, and so I asked if there was a way that we could that I could take a look at some of the onboarding. They said, yeah, sure. So we ended up coming up with a program for new hires to go out to lunch once a week with 4 different people from across the business, 4 different business units each week. It took way more time and spreadsheets than you would have thought to set up a lunch program. That's usually how those things go. The CFO, was the CFO a fan of this, or the controller? I mean, they were not, right? Why are you now expensing, marketing lunches, right? These people, you understand, the sales guys get their lunches expensed, that's fine. But, for everyone else in the company, we're now spending $3,000 extra for onboarding in person. That's kind of the first level of how is this impacting the company, right? But the kind of the underlying level is, are we getting to know each other better? Are we learning at a deeper level what the other business units are doing, how that impacts my role, who I'm going to talk to when I have a cross-sell opportunity, as opposed to saying, let me get back to you on that, say, hey, I know that Karen can take care of that for you right now, right? So these effects are longer lasting, but they're also far out in the future, further out in the future. But kind of getting millennials and younger people involved in owning something that has a deeper impact, that ties into the bigger picture, I think is really important, as has been mentioned a few times. So that's one of the ways to do it, right? You don't have to hand over the keys to your general ledger, right, to your staff accountants to make these things happen, because allowing millennials to own some of these things is kind of terrifying, right? We're still learning, as we just talked about. So there's ways to do it that aren't necessarily immediately business vital, but that do have great effects further out in the future. So I just wanted to throw that example out there.
And Steve, that ties in perfectly with our next slide with mentorship programs and being able to build cross-generational work teams. What this means is, and MasterCard is a perfect example, what they did is they did a survey where baby boomers and millennials would all identify their weak points. So what are their issues? The chief human resource officer, his weak point was technology, how he can advertise and market in social media. The weak point for the millennial employer was networking skills, how to be better in regard to communicating and leading presentations. So they developed this cross-generational mentorship program where the two teams, they work together. So the chief human resources officer is working with the millennial, and they're reaping reciprocal benefits. Kind of exactly why the Analyst and Associate Board has been established. We use the wealth of knowledge provided by mentors such as Janine and such as Tom. And so that's how we are able to be in front of you guys today, and we practice our own development skills, we practice our own communication skills, networking skills. So these cross-generational teams provide for a more collaborative environment for everyone to kind of use their weaknesses and build them into their strengths. Promotions and feedback. Baby boomers, they're more used to the annual formal feedback process. Generation X is used to feedback when a project is completed, whereas millennials, they want constant feedback. Again, back to social media. They're always so used to comments and likes on their pictures, and they want constant attention, constant approval. They seek recognition, and they search for new opportunities. John, as you were saying, rotational program, and Courtney, you were saying that also. EY is really big on different rotational programs also.
I was just going to ask, on the millennials and they want the constant feedback and the attention and recognition, when you give them that, how do you prevent them from them then trying to monetize that?
And that's a perfect example for our other one. So how you prevent them from monetizing it. It's important that when you provide feedback, you also provide areas of improvement. So you keep people humble you keep millennials humble to it. After a presentation, for instance, when we will read the feedback on how we presented, it's always amazing to hear like, oh, good job out there. But it's always also great when you hear feedback of this is how you can improve. Some might take that as criticism, but those that know that it's essential feedback for their success will know how to leverage that feedback into onwards and onwards in their career. And GE established a touchpoint system which allows them to make less formal, frequent feedbacks. So they emphasize day-to-day development, and I know a lot of companies nowadays, they've established apps, so you can, after a meeting, you can pull up your smartphone, you access the app, and then you might write a review like, Angie, good job on the meeting today. Next time, maybe you should talk slower or less movement with your hand. And so it's always, you can always have them continuously learning from this. And something I hear from the staff accountants at my job is that sometimes the annual feedback process, like it's great that they're receiving this, but it's a year after they did all the work. So sometimes they're not learning exactly what they did wrong until they actually read the reviews at year end. So this constant feedback, it allows you to right away apply it the next day. Oh, I didn't do good on this presentation. Let me see how I can improve. Next presentation is in 2 weeks. That's perfect. I can practice that onwards and onwards. And then promotions example. Make sure there's open communication and transparency. Whole Foods allows access to all of its employees at all levels to view what the salaries are from the CEO to the lower level individuals. They have open communication about future salaries and benefits. I'm not saying all companies should provide this access, but why is this important is because it allows for purpose and transparency. At trainings, even in public accounting, they always show you the projection of your salary when you become a partner or when you become senior manager. Why? They want to retain you. Sometimes it's easier when a firm offers you, let's say your pay is 75K, sometimes another firm will say, oh, we'll offer you 80. But in the long term, is the rate of increase in your salary the same as if you were to transition into the other company? So this is why it's important for the current company to show you how they are competing in the marketplace and what purpose you play.
Just a quick comment on that. I know a lot of our millennials were asking about, what is your salary plan? I mean, what's your compensation plan? And we don't have, the traditional plan of we give a raise every year. I mean, those are kind of gone now. And so we actually had to write a compensation plan that told them, how we manage compensation and how do they, and what do we look for so that they can get to the next level. So it was kind of just a little different than what, the normal traditional way was.
And for bridging the gap, 2 points I want to highlight here are allow for mistakes. Something that I'm currently learning from my managers is that sometimes you might be seeing your senior or your staff doing something wrong. Allow that to happen. Allow them to learn from their own mistakes, because that way, instead of you criticizing them or kind of holding their hand through every single step, then that's not them learning. That's you teaching them how to learn. Whereas allow them to develop their own learning styles. And another important thing is lunch and learn sessions. I think this is critical when you are in the workforce. If there's an issue that you are seeing with millennials, if they're leaving work early or they're not being as productive, have these lunch and learn sessions. Talk about bridging the gap in these sessions, exactly how we are doing today. Have a breakfast, have a lunch. Be able to communicate, whether you are a manager or whether you are a staff, everyone should know what the opinions are. Sometimes what hinders a firm or a small business from growing is the inability for the staff to feel like they can share and provide innovative ideas. And then sometimes the CEOs or the CFOs might feel like, how can I motivate these groups, or how can I talk to them in order for them to understand their purpose?
Quick
Oh,
question.
yeah.
On this learning from mistakes. Since my husband was technical director of an engineering architectural firm, to let something go out the door with a structural flaw, to be built incorrectly structurally and fall down and get a lawsuit, do you think that's a good way to learn?
And I completely agree with that. So when I say learning from your mistakes, I don't mean that let that reflect in the final product. I'm talking more if you're in a room with them, kind of listen to it and see how it plays out, but of course catch on to that. If you're a manager, you're never going to quality is number one. You want to make sure that as a firm you produce the best quality, because your name is your brand. So you want to make sure that you're always on top of those things. But it's more of in smaller tasks, you can let them allow for mistakes, but still pitch in the end. When you see that it's growing and they're still not learning, then definitely provide your feedback. That's why an organization works with the feedback process. And a question for the panelists, what advice would you give companies to bridge the generational gaps?
I can start. I think that the thing to keep in mind is that there's always kind of bumps when it comes to managing across generations. There just might not have been FEI breakfasts about it in the past, right? But I'm willing to bet that no matter your age, when you were 2 years out of school and working, that you probably had some things that you wish you could have changed about your company. And I'm also willing to bet that you still have some things that you wish you could change about your company right now. Just because Google offers a cafeteria doesn't mean that only millennials eat there and like it, right? If there was a cafeteria at your office, you would probably be okay with that. You may even like it, right? Bean bags may not be your thing, but what I'm trying to point out is that a lot of the things that are kind of pinned to millennials' wish lists are really great for employee retention and happiness and culture across the board. So when some of these things come up, instead of saying, well, that's not how we've done it, or that's really going to, make me uncomfortable. Actually, if you say that, then you should bring that up. But think about how these things are going to affect your day-to-day. That's kind of how I like to think about it. And if the answer is not much, then give it a go, or at least hear them out. And be open to that feedback, not just from the millennial side, right, but from the person who you graduated with, from school. Their feedback is just as valuable as the millennials, and being responsive to that across the organization is a good tact no matter what the age is. So that's kind of what advice I would give.
Yeah, I would say it's all about creating the dialogue and opening up the conversation and having conversations such as this. And a short anecdote about experience that brings us to light at our company. So we had hired a summer intern, call him Matt, and that was his name. And Matt was your stereotypical not great millennial employee. So kind of roll in late, cut out a little early, see him playing on Facebook. There's big projects coming up and not really volunteering to pitch in. And, the CEO and I were like, we'll hint. Well, we're working whenever he comes in. He'll catch on. Our managers are working when I come in. They're still working when I leave. Matt wasn't really picking up on the hints, and like a little concerned about his future as intern with us. And it's time for us to have the talk. The talk. And Brad, our CEO, will joke about how much energy and confidence he had to muster up to talk to the intern. But he had to talk, and it was, it references some of the things that you were saying earlier, which is, if we say 9, we need you there 5 or 10 minutes earlier. Whenever we have a big project, we need you pitching in, all hands on deck. And it was laying all of those expectations, which to us, it was like, why shouldn't he know this? Why do we have to say that? But it was just crystal clear expectations. And do you know what Matt said? I was like, thank you. Like, I had no idea. Thank you. And his performance dramatically improved. And the point that jumped out to us is at the end of the summer, we asked him, what was one of the most memorable parts about working here? And he was like, that conversation that we had where you told me about my performance, that was priceless, and that's what I'm going to take forward. So that, again, is just a key example of opening up the conversation. And you can have it a few different ways at your organization. There's obviously formal training, but having roundtable discussions, like have the topic be flexibility, and you have all generations just talking about it and what it means at your company.
Well, back when he was first brought on, why wasn't he kind of given that pitch to begin with?
Yeah, we think that we set expectations, but I don't think we drill down of, we say, hey, office hours are 9 to 5, but expectations would be whenever it's a busy season, you might be coming in an hour early, an hour late. So it was like that second piece and that higher level of setting expectations.
To what Courtney is saying, I know that's kind of the same in my firm. Our new interns are kind of similar to your intern. And basically, I'm kind of in charge of training the new interns and the new associates now. So I set those clear guidelines in the beginning. I remind them after 2 weeks of being here. I consistently remind them of how they need to be doing and how they're doing currently. And they say that helps them so much. And I don't do it in an environment that's intimidating or scary to them. I do it in more of a friendly way, telling them that these are the expectations that are required when you are full-time and things like that. Retaining and recruiting millennials, anticipate their needs, for example, a rotational program, incentivize accordingly. For example, older millennials might want to have a flexible work arrangement to have time for their families and their children, whereas younger millennials will want to try different things, put on different hats in the organization, be involved in a bunch of different projects. And then keeping up with the competitors. If Grant Thornton is coming out with a rotational program for their new associates, then Ernst & Young should be doing the same thing to retain their talent. Retaining and recruiting. Example, General Electric has this program when they're recruiting new students that they involve them in their virtual reality setup of their machines, and they let the students be involved with them, and it's a good way for GE to attract talent because it shows that they're technologically advanced. And Whole Foods involves the employees in the recruitment and interviewing process for upper management, and it speaks to giving upward feedback. I know managers are always involved in the performance reviews of the associates, and seniors are also involved in the performance review of the associates, but have the associates be involved in the performance review of their managers, because a manager's role is to manage staff, and who better knows how they are as a manager than their subordinates. But another question for the panelists. What recruiting or retention methods have you seen being employed by other companies or companies that you work for?
We'll start on this one. No, I think the one thing we do, we use younger people to recruit younger people. So we have our younger people go out to colleges to recruit people. The other thing, one of the other things we've done is people who are relatively younger in the organization, and we want to make sure that they don't decide to job hop. We'll provide a long-term type of deferred comp plan where, for the next 3 years, every year we're going to give you 3 years of an opportunity in pay. So maybe it's, we're going to give them a total of $5,000 a year, and then next year's going to be $5,000 a year, and eventually the longer they stay, the more money they're going to get. The one thing that I noticed myself is, as a baby boomer, when we look at resumes to go hire people, we're looking down that resume, we're going, oh, job hopper, this guy never. And it's so hard to give that up as you look down those resumes and go, okay, if they're there for 2 years, we're good with it now. Whereas before we wanted to see someone who was there 5, 6 years, and then, that person's only had 3 jobs. That's great, they're going to be a great person, but it's just not the way it is today. So, we also have to open up our minds as well. And then fun events, we do, one of our values is charity, and so we do a lot of charity events. And one of the things we do, we give a day off. If you go do charity work, take the day off and go do the charity work. It's great whenever you can do that. So just some things we can do for you.
I'll share a few things, and we've heard a lot about feedback, and I'll toss this out to the group quickly. If you fill in the blank, no news is good news. No news is good news. Millennials, no news is
I'm doing something wrong.
bad news. So that's one shift in perspective about feedback. Again, not the annual review. It's so many organizations are moving to quarterly check-ins, spot coaching, in-the-moment feedback to retain employees. Again, you hear millennials, no news, I'm performing, it's bad news. The other piece is like building a class mentality. So a lot of organizations are doing this. So in the summer, you have the new hires, the summer of 2017. That's your class. You're doing social events, you're building that collaboration. Coworkers are the unsung heroes of employee engagement. We talk about that. So I don't want to leave my coworker. I don't want to leave my cohort group. So really building that collaboration and teamwork within quote classes. And then finally, I'll say just whenever it comes to retention, investing in your managers and management training. So I'm sure you've all heard employees don't leave companies, they leave managers. And even if a lot of the things we're talking about, senior leadership gets it, if that direct manager of the millennial isn't giving feedback, isn't providing a flexible schedule, isn't talking about career pathing, then the millennial might not have that engagement. So the manager training is pretty powerful.
Millennials are all about teamwork, and if you have a great team, you will not likely see anyone leaving the group. I have a friend who works at Sears Holding Corporation, which, as we all know, is a dying company. They think they're a going concern for the people in the company, but the auditors haven't quite given them that distinction yet. So I'm not sure why, but my friend, he loves his team. His team is full of baby boomers, millennials, Gen X, everything. And he says that he just doesn't leave the company because his team is great. And it's crazy because it's a dying company. They have so many layoffs going on, but he said as long as his team is still there, he's happy being there. So it really does matter. And then new trends to be aware of for Generation Z, you have to keep up with technology. You cannot lag behind in that because one of the most important things to the new generation is technology. And then the increased need of flexibility, as we've already touched, and then aligning the company's mission to a greater purpose. That's very important to millennials. I understand that accounting and finance, we don't really serve a charitable larger purpose, but having events such as Casual Friday, if you wear jeans to work on Friday, donate to a charity picked by the company and stuff like that. Having for the longest day, Alzheimer's Association has the longest day. Giving your workers a day off for that to volunteer and serve the community is very important to millennials. And thank you so much. Open to any questions that